Recently, in spring 2023, workers from the local ecology department in the Mexican city of WATOP, Sonora, carried out a mass removal of stingers from stingrays. This is the time of year when stingrays can be found in coastal waters because they follow ocean currents. Coastal waters are crucial for stingrays. They reproduce once a year, from April to May, and during this period, they move to shallow areas with sandy bottoms. The water's warmer there, which is perfect for them to mature. The representatives from the department claim everything is fine since stingrays can regrow their removed stingers. Plus, they've been doing this procedure for years. But before we start, let's have a coffee and take a deep breath. Making this video took an emotional toll on me, but I felt it was important to show you what some people are up to. Just an unobtrusive reminder to hit that like button if you haven't yet. Let's start by talking about why nature gave stingrays their stingers. These stingers are mostly for protection, as stingrays have natural predators like seals, sea lions, and sharks. That is, big, hungry, and dangerous creatures. To fend off such threats, stingrays need the right weapons, like a venomous barb or tail spine. However, all this arsenal is used only for defense. No stingray in the world will jab its spine into a potential prey. They just don't work that way. But when a stingray feels pressure on its back, senses danger, or gets trapped, its tail with the stinger reacts on its own. The weapon shoots upward toward the potential predator, acting like an automatic defense mechanism. The stingray strikes without even realizing what it's doing. They might not even realize just how dangerous their weapon is. Depending on the species, the stinger can be up to 8 inches long, but the stingray has no control over it. They only control their tail. The stinger has a sharp barb with serrated edges or spikes that point toward the fish's body, so once it pierces a predator's flesh, pulling it out is tough and incredibly painful. And at the base of the barb, there's a venom gland, just to make sure. Basically, all of this sounds like a pretty complicated but necessary thing. Evolution wouldn't have favored the development of such a weapon if it wasn't really needed. But if stingrays can regenerate their stingers, can they live for a while without them? Unfortunately, there hasn't been any research done to assess the harm caused to stingrays. There aren't even official records of how many individuals had their stingers removed. It's like there's no info at all, which is pretty odd considering this was a procedure carried out by authorities who claim it poses no threat to the stingrays. However, we do know that being caught already puts a lot of stress on stingrays. Removing the stinger is essentially like performing surgery. Yet, after removing it, the animals were simply tossed back into the sea without any further help. Something tells me that probably doesn't help their chances of survival. Local media also claimed that several days after the removal of the stingers, hundreds of dead stingrays were found in the same area. I tried to find a comment from the authorities on this matter, but maybe it's just a coincidence, right? By the way, in July 2013 on the Mexican coast, at least 300 dead stingrays washed ashore. Could they have also fallen victim to stinger removal? Well, no. Turns out these stingrays were fine in that department. In fact, the media wrote about the danger to people. Even dead stingrays have stingers that remain a serious threat. Instead, many of these fish had their fins removed. It's this part of the stingrays that's usually served as a snack, while fishermen simply discard the rest. However, all of this happened on the east coast of Mexico. The stingers were removed on the west coast. Also, it was 10 years later. Still, I'd say that the stingrays in those areas have enough problems and chances to die without throwing more at them. Back in 2015, dead stingrays were found washed up in a completely different spot at Murray's Bay on Auckland's North Shore. These fish had their tails cut off along with their stingers. It turns out many fishermen do this to protect themselves because nobody wants to get stung by those stingers. But the thing is, stingrays with removed tails don't seem to live very long. What about the stinger? Can it grow back? It's an interesting question. We found out about a method used in aquariums to reduce stingray-related injury. It's basically clipping of the tail spine. It might sound harsh, but stingray spines are like fingernails, meaning they don't have nerve endings, so everything grows back eventually. That's why the procedure is painless and reversible. It's harmless for the stingrays. Also, the tail barbs of rays are shed and regrown. For example, both the round stingray, Eurybatus hilaire, and the Atlantic stingray, Dasyitis sabina, replace their tail barbs each year. And everything regenerates fully during the summer to fall. No big deal. Moreover, when a stingray attacks someone, it might lose part of its stinger, which then grows back. However, it's important to understand that if the stinger's removed abruptly, forcefully, it could cause damage to internal organs and even result in death. And the question is, was the procedure of removing the stinger in Huatabampo really carried out safely? The second question might sound like, why bother doing this at all? Well, here's the deal. Stingrays had their stingers removed to keep tourists safe. If someone accidentally steps on a stingray, it'll start defending itself. And that's painful, not to mention the cost of treatment. And if you think that this isn't the right move for attracting tourists, you're absolutely correct. And you're not alone in the thought. The authorities in northern Mexico have filed a complaint against the official who ordered fishermen to remove the stingers from stingrays while they were still alive. They promise it won't happen again. Sure, we believe them. No. Actually, is a stingray sting really that dangerous? In most cases, when the stinger pierces a person's body, the pressure causes the protective sheath to tear, then the sharp serrated edges of the spine sink in, injecting venom into the wound. It's usually not fatal to humans, although it causes intense pain, and deaths are very rare. The most famous one is the death of Steve Irwin. The renowned naturalist was struck by a stingray barb straight to the heart, and the stingray was very large, so it was more of a tragic accident. Most experts agree that stingrays are generally docile creatures, only attacking in self-defense. People often get ankle and shin injuries when they accidentally step on a stingray buried in the sand, causing the startled fish to raise its dangerous tail. Remember, it's not really in control of that reaction. The stingrays that got their stingers removed in Mexico are nothing like the one that killed Irwin. They're way too tiny and don't really endanger people's lives. The most they can do is cause tourists some pain. Yeah, the pain is really intense because the venom of a stingray consists of enzymes like 5-nucleotidase and phosphodiesterase, along with the neurotransmitter serotonin. Serotonin triggers strong contractions in smooth muscles, making the venom so painful. The enzymes cause tissue and cell death. If the venom gets into a sensitive area like the ankle, the consequences can be treated, but help needs to be administered quickly. Otherwise, well, it could end in amputation. Venom is no joke. While venom can definitely do some serious damage, the most devastating weapon of a stingray could actually be its barbs. It's all about their position. The barb easily goes in, but the serrated edges make removing it excruciating. And if the barb gets lodged in your chest or abdomen, it could cause massive tissue damage, potentially leading to death. The stingray must be really big, though, way bigger than those with removed stingers. And even though stepping on a stingray in the sand is pretty easy since they're nearly invisible, there's a special walking technique. Moving around stingray habitats in this way greatly reduces the risk of getting stung. It's simple. Stingrays often go into defense mode when stepped on, so you just need to bury your feet in the sand. That way, the stingray will feel less threatened and might just swim away when people get too close. And all of this sounds way better than weird, potentially harmful procedures. Though removing stingers is just one of many crazy ways people have harmed nature for the sake of tourists. Back in 1989, 5 hotel and motel owners in Wildwood Crest, New Jersey dumped chlorine tablets into the ocean. Why? Believe it or not, they did it to lower high levels of bacteria in the water along the coast. This was because the contamination level was unacceptable and even dangerous, making the water too dirty for tourists. As a result, around 100 gallons of chlorine tablets were dumped into the ocean off the coast of Wildwood Crest at dawn. Do you see the problem? Chlorine is a highly reactive chemical, and in large amounts, it can be used as a chemical weapon. In fact, it was used during World War I as a gas. However, the chlorine levels considered safe for people and found in tap water can cause chemical burns to marine invertebrates and fish. It literally burns the fish's gills, then enters their bloodstream, causing burns throughout their bodies. And here's what happens to a body of water when there's too much chlorine in it. At certain levels, chlorine can wipe out almost all life in water, from small fish to insects, other fish, and amphibians. Nothing will survive. Plus, it's unstable in water and evaporates into the air on its own. It's hard to say if those 100 gallons of chlorine had any serious impact, considering how much time has passed, but the idea of treating the ocean like a personal pool that you can just clean up seems pretty questionable. Frankly, it's a terrible idea. How do you like the idea from Spain, where local authorities sprayed bleach over 1.2 miles of beach near the town of Zahara de los Atunes? The goal was similar: to disinfect the area for tourists so that families with children could visit without worrying about COVID-19. Yep, bleach against the coronavirus. But instead of being helpful, this absurd move led to the destruction of the beach's ecosystem, killing insects and migratory birds nesting in the nearby dunes. According to the ecologist, the bleach completely wiped out everything there, including the insects. Keep in mind, these beaches and dunes are protected nesting and breeding grounds for migratory birds. But not only were they poisoned with bleach, the nests were crushed by tractors spraying the chemical. All this destruction was entirely predictable. Unfortunately, none of the local authorities thought to consult specialists. They should have, because experts would have told them that bleach is indiscriminate in what it kills, and everyone would suffer. Well, except for the coronavirus. There's really no guarantee it helped in fighting it, or made any sense at all. The only thing they managed to do was kill a bunch of living creatures and get a fine of up to $60,000. If I were the coronavirus, I'd be chuckling maliciously. However, all of these are isolated incidents mentioned in the media and so on. Meanwhile, every year, numerous animals suffer due to the actions of tourists. I'm talking about safaris. Imagine you're a cheetah hunting down an antelope, and you nailed it. Hooray! Dinner's provided and your cubs won't go hungry. But just then, a bunch of cars swarm into the scene, each trying to park as close as possible. Guides shout to each other, tourists snap photos and videos. It's total chaos. Even humans would struggle to eat in such a situation, let alone animals. Once, a car full of tourists got so close to a family of cheetahs that they almost hit one of the cubs, and all just to watch them. It's a shame that cheetahs couldn't tell what they really thought about it. During the wildebeest migration across the Mara River, there are up to 60 cars parked on each side so that tourists could see this incredible event with their own eyes. However, these cars hinder the animals and create additional obstacles for them, even though migration is already challenging enough. This phenomenon even has a name: aggressive tourism. And the scale of the problem is growing with every city. While ecologists fight to preserve wild animals, the animals are just trying to live their lives. The tourists act as if everything that's happening is a performance, and it's all arranged just for them so they can disregard the comfort and well-being of the actors. Don't believe me? Well, just look at the numbers. A cheetah's hunting success rate varies between 20% and 50% depending on its age, the size of the prey, and the environment. 20% is a really slim chance that the animal will just be able to fill its belly. Now let's imagine on top of the usual hunting challenges, you throw in cars, people, and noise. What about the wildebeest? During their migration, there are often so many cars that they come very close to the river, making it impossible for the animals to cross safely. Wildebeests have to choose risky paths, sometimes even falling from steep banks, risking broken legs. Ending up with a broken leg in the river, where hungry crocodiles await, is a situation that can't end well. The only thing left for such an animal is to wait for death. And in this case, the crocodile seems like a fairly humane outcome. As for the tourists, well, they get their show, an unforgettable spectacle, videos and photos for social media, and a story to tell friends, perhaps even to kids. Is it really worth it? All of this: bleached beaches, removed stingers, wild animals deprived of the opportunity to be wild animals? You know what I think about this? Sometimes our channel could really use a bit of rough language. It's not about wildebeest being eaten by a predator, it's about making things feel more authentic. If you want to see the raw and harsh side of the world, find a better way without disrupting natural processes. I think I'll go touch the grass now. And if you've finished watching, maybe give this video a like. See you later.